He does not deny the possibility of the existence of God, but he's not sure. So this man, who was a devout Christian, living his life accordingly, studying the scriptures, it led him to losing faith altogether. And so now he calls himself a happy agnostic. He doesn't know whether there's a God or not. He's not sure. But he says, but if there's a God, it is definitely not the one that we learn from the Bible. Not the one that is taught according to the Jews and the Christians, which is another closer step to us. When I first heard about this, I'm like, the next thing you expect is this person to become a Muslim. Because these are the steps that usually take you to Islam. When you start realizing that the religion that you've been following is man-made, and then you look around for a religion that is not man-made, the only religion that you will find is Islam. And so we're anticipating that, and we're trying to make it easy for him tonight. Hopefully that he will eventually hear this and realize that if he's been looking for the truth, as he said, then the truth has always been around. You just have to look a little closer, and we will try to facilitate that by giving him some answers which he was unable to find through his mission. The question was that made him leave Christianity: how could there be a God when there is so much suffering in the world? Okay? We will see how that could be. How could one explain these statements altogether? One, God is all-powerful. Does everyone agree? Yes. Everyone agree God is all-powerful. Next, God is all-loving. Yes. We will see. We will see, because that has a whole nother connotation in the Christian world, which we don't have in the Muslim world, but your answer is pretty close. There's a potential for that. But we'll see what happens to some human beings. Thirdly, there's suffering. And we all agree that there's suffering. Just right now, if you go to the news, the typhoon that has hit China and Taiwan, and people are, have lost their homes. Thousands of people are misplaced, and there's a disaster going on in the world right now, besides the wars and everything else. So suffering is going on. No one can deny that. So how can one say there's an all-powerful God who can change things, all-loving, who wants to change things, and still there's suffering? Okay? Sounds difficult, but it's not. So Ehrman's inability to reconcile the claims of faith with the facts of real life led him to reject Christianity. God's problem. In his book, God's Problem, Ehrman discusses his own personal distress on the Bible's explanations and a few versions from various philosophers in email correspondence as to why God allows or even mandates suffering. It's a huge book. It's a bestseller. And he goes into the intricate details of the subject matter. His own views, those provided by the Bible, other people advising him, emailing him, listen man, this is why. He brought everything together and he was unsatisfied. He was still unsatisfied. But we will see about that as well. So there's a need to answer the question for those genuinely seeking that answer, whether it is Professor Bart or otherwise. Why? Because Allah says, مَا أَصَابَ مِن مُصِيبَةٍ إِلَّا بِإِذْنِ اللَّهِ وَمَنْ يُؤْمِن بِاللَّهِ يَهْدِ قَلْبَهِ وَاللَّهُ بِكُلِّ شَيْءٍ عَلِيمٌ. No disaster strikes except by permission of Allah. And whoever believes in Allah, he will guide his heart. And Allah is knowing of all things. Subhanallah. This summarizes the whole problem. No disaster happens except by the permission of Allah. If you believe, Allah will guide your heart. You won't have a problem if you believe. If you don't believe, problems will arise. So we will try to bring belief to those who are looking for belief, and Allah is the one who guides. A tree. The tree, wa alaikum salam, is made up of the roots and the branches. The trunk of the tree and the branches. This issue of suffering is a side issue. It's a branch. And one cannot understand it unless one understands the root. Okay? No matter what kind of answers we give, they may be unsatisfactory to the person who does not understand the foundations. So before we deal with the side issue, we must go back to the foundations. Before we deal with the side issue, we must go back to the foundations. What are the foundations? What if you find a watch in the sand? You walking down the beach, and you find a watch. What is the first thing that comes to mind? One of two things. One is a logical answer, and the other one is an illogical answer. Although the atheists claim otherwise. Logically, the illogical, let's begin with the illogical. The illogical is, whoa, how in the world did this watch come here? How did it come together? Was it manufactured by chance? Was there an explosion up in the skies and then a watch came about and it just happens to be lying on the beach? Now this is, we say this is illogical. Even if it happened a million times, million explosions, that will never happen. Logically you will say, I wonder who was here and who forgot or dropped or lost his watch. No human being can deny that, logically speaking. So we're saying this because we're trying to say, look, to say that there may be a God or there may be the non-existence of God is something that is nonsensical / illogical. Look at the creation. If you refuse to believe that a watch came into existence by mere chance, then how can one look around him, see everything and the way the universe is functioning, including yourself? You, the son of Adam, this complicated, sophisticated machine that does not need batteries or electricity or anything of this nature. How you function, how you move, how you understand, how you see, how you hear. How could this come into existence without an originator, without a designer for the design? We say this is illogical. So then there must be a creator. There must be a creator. It's impossible, according to all, even Plato and Aristotle, these are the most famous philosophers, they argued that there must be a God. The most famous philosophers, which people follow their footsteps to deny God, they themselves concluded that there's no way that there's not a God. Now they didn't believe in God Islamically, they didn't have the right belief system in terms of the other elements of the Tawheed, but they said, look, there must be a God. And so we say to anyone who has some sort of doubt, how is it possible that everything came into existence without a manufacturer? If your cell phone, if your recorder, if a pen cannot suddenly exist without someone who is designing it, then obviously and more likely the rest of the creation cannot be brought into existence by mere chance, whether you call it the Big Bang Theory or anything else. Planets cannot collide, or some energy ball cannot explode and bring about all of us. Is it possible? It's impossible. So that must be understood as a foundation. Before we deal with suffering, we must first acknowledge that there's a God. And if there's a God, then there's more